All right, guys, so we're going to start our first video on the ISQ kind of information series. A lot of you guys have been asking for laminations videos. What do those look like? What does erosion videos look like? So on and so forth. You kind of been begging me, so I'm so sorry. We've been, really busy, but I'm going to get down to the nitty gritty today, okay? So the first thing, when you turn on this 38DL Plus, everybody always asks me, Theo, when I press second function cal 0, what is that number, okay? Or what's going on here? This zeroing calibration. So this unit, it does two things when we press that button. The first one is it checks the temperature of the probe. As we know, when we're doing hot pipe or anything like that, this transducer gets hot, okay? So there's delay material in here. In your class, you should have learned that, as material heats up, it expands. And because it expands, sound travels slower through the material, making it longer to pass through, thus making it seem thicker than it actually is. If you guys have not seen the UT high temperature video done by Paul Holloway, I'll put a link somewhere below. Go check that out. It'll kind of explain what I'm talking about here. Freaking phenomenal video, okay? The next thing is it's checking the length of the delay. So the unit sends a signal all the way to the front of the unit, and if you have coupling on there, it says, hey, I'm this much longer than I actually am. So you'll start to see where it'll show erroneous signals. Your 100,000 signal will be way over here, and it'll say wrong echo detected, wrong echo detected. Now you could be like some people and send this back to, back then, Olympus, Evident, whoever, and, they will fix it and charge you, hopefully they don't, but maybe they will. Or, you can actually just do this. You hit second function. Okay, you'll see it highlight there, and then setup menu, and you go to resets. And all you need to do is do a measurement reset. We actually tell you guys that we highly recommend that you do this measurement reset prior to taking the ISQ test, just so that you know that your calibration is perfect, okay? So today we're going to be talking about laminations, okay? I have a series of laminations here. And we're going to be talking about coded, uncoded, right? Uncoded, coded, sorry. And we're going to be working through some mock-ups. So maybe you don't have actual, epoxy coated components, but you got some RT film, right? I'm going to show you exactly how you do this exact same test with RT film. Okay, so whenever you did that second function, setup menu reset, it reset a couple of things. It reset the time of flight, or how long it takes for sound to travel through this transducer. So we're going to see that our calibration is wrong. These units actually hold the calibration. So if you calibrate one time, you'll notice the next day you'll come in, you're probably still within cal, provided that you didn't you didn't throw the transducer in the truck or whatever. So like if you were going to an NDT training school, refinedndt.com. If you're going to an NDT training school and you come in from the day before and you come in the day after, you realize, hey, my cal hasn't changed. That's because it stayed the same room temperature. It kind of held it in. One thing that's going to change is the measuring rate. If you didn't check out our last video on the introduction to corrosion signals, go back and check that out. But the measuring rate, we kind of compare it to a pulse repetition rate. Definitely go check that video out. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to go ahead, change my measuring rate. Okay, so about 16, which is a good start, okay? Now, when we do ultrasonic thickness, we only want to ever have 2 back walls on the screen, okay? So, the reason for this is we understand that these are just multiples, okay? This is a repeat signal of this guy. This is a repeat signal of this guy. That is a repeat signal of that guy. And if you're wondering about all these little signals in between, these are mode converted shear waves. You should have learned that in your UT1 or UT thickness course. But essentially, all these repeats are just whatever characteristic the first signal does, they will do as well. We don't need a big range. It changes our inspection window. And when I say our inspection window, I'm talking about this area right here, or entry surface to first back wall. Now I know there's probably going to be some level 3s that are watching this video. Guys, the whole point of this is just to kind of get them to understand, okay? So if I don't say all the terminology correct and the way you would say it, just understand it's about getting them to pass the test, okay? So the smaller I make this side of the screen, the less I'm going to be able to detect a subtle change, okay? If I have something like this and I'm measuring a plate that's close to that thickness and there is a change, I can see the subtle change. But in this same capacity, you see that subtle change, right? In the same capacity, if I have a bunch of range on the screen, doesn't really look as though someone who's a new beginner will think, hey, maybe I lost coupling, maybe the surface is rough, and they'll bypass right by that, okay? So the first thing we need to do is always make sure we have just enough for just enough range for 2 back walls, okay? We're gonna go ahead and cal in. Today we're looking at laminations, okay? We're gonna talk about some very interesting facts about them. So let me go ahead and cal in. We're gonna be in standard mode, which is entry surface to first echo, okay, or first back wall echo. And it's also taking into consideration the time of flight through the delay material, right? And then also our calibration block. So we're gonna go ahead and cal in. We do that by putting it on the thick step and pressing cal vel. Now you can do this in reverse. You can do the cal 0 on the thin step and then go all the way up to the thick step. Choice is totally yours. When you're doing flaw detectors, you want to make sure that you pick steps that are very close to each other because of V-path error. If you don't know what V-path error is, you need to check out Paul Holloway's video on V-path error. Freaking phenomenal video. Hence, you're starting to see a trend here, right? So make sure you check that out. But with V-path error, we don't have a problem when it comes to these units because they have an auto recognition pin, so it takes care of that for us. It doesn't matter, you know, if we use all the steps, it doesn't matter. The unit takes care of it for us. So we're gonna go ahead and cal in, start on the thick step. We're gonna press cal velocity, hit enter, and then tell the unit that this is 500 thousandths thick. We'll press the cal 0 button, mosey on down to the 100 thousandths, hit enter, and we'll tell the unit that that's 100. You need to be within plus or minus 2 thousandths. If you have an error, okay, for any reason, go back to what I told you, second function setup menu, do a measurement reset, you won't have any issues at all. Okay, so one of the key things I want you to pay attention to, right, and I want you to make sure that, you know, if you're watching this video on YouTube, you can zoom in on the screen. I'll try to zoom in for you now, but right here on this, I want you to notice that our first echo at the 100, it's smaller than our second back wall third, and then we see a decline. If I go to the second step, bring my gain down, you can see the same thing. This guy's kind of lower than this one, right, or second, then they get low, they step down, and now at 300 thousandths they step down. The reason that's occurring is because some of the sound pressure, once it hits that bounce, it's only getting a little small area of that. Again, definitely check out the V-path error. You're going to see it. You're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. With a lamination, if it does not cross the entire beam width, okay, if it does not cross the entire beam width, as you just saw at it's going to be a low amplitude. You were probably thinking, Theo, hey, that 100,000 step, it crossed the whole back wall. You're absolutely right, it did. Or it crossed the whole beam spread. You're absolutely right, it did. But the issue is that signal artifact, right? Said that to say this. Not all laminations are going to appear higher than your back wall. It really depends on the thickness. As we get thicker, absolutely, right? But if it's thinner, that's not going to be the case, and this is a prime example. Also, it depends on the size of the flaw itself, right? So not just in thickness, you know, if it's a 300 thousandths plate and the flaw is coming up at 150, we're going to see something like this. But it also depends on the height or the flaw size, right? So if it's small, right, as we're going to look at a couple of different sizes here, we'll see it won't take away the back wall. If it is, it completely will take that back wall away, right? So like on 300s, 200s, yes, the back wall will diminish, but it may not be in a high amplitude like you were thinking it would have been, okay? So that's first and foremost. And when we start talking about height or height amplitude, we have to set a reference level, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and start with this plate, 375 thousandths thick. In our classes, we start with what we call known visuals, right? So you can actually see what it looks like. As you're looking at the signal characteristic, this dot right here, it's just white out, but that's where our lamination is, okay? So when we start scanning a plate, the very first thing you ever want to do is set a reference level. Now it's really important that you understand what I'm about to say here, because when I say take the signal to 80%, you'll see some horizontal lines that cross this screen, okay? Each one of these lines is 20%. In standard mode, for this unit to recognize any signal, the signal has to be above 20%. Now, it's also reading this lobe, okay? You should have learned about radio frequency signals, negatives and positive, in your UT1 and UT thickness class. If you didn't, again, refinedndt.com. Okay, we can definitely make sure that you get that training that you need. But right here, that lobe is at 80%, okay? That is the facts, right? But when I say take it to 80%, I want you to bring that gain down to the tip of one of the lobes is at 80%. You're probably thinking, what? Why? Why would you ever do that? I'm gonna walk across the corrosion signal real quick, and I want you to see the difference from that signal at 80% of what I just set to the real 80%, okay? This is when we start talking about detection, right? So when I set a reference level, everything, when there's good wall, it stays right about that reference level. But when I walk into something, all of a sudden, everything drops and rolls, right? You lose signal. That is a key indicator of, hey, I got something here, right? We talked about corrosion last time. We talked about the characteristics. Look at this as a fast scanning tool. Scan, 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 scan. What is that? Oh, no. Now, in order to read a signal, it has to be above 20%. We're going to increase the gain, and then obviously try to get the lowest spot in this area, okay? Bringing that signal as far left as we possibly can, but that's not the point of this part. Right now, I'm gonna take that signal, okay? It's at 80, you see that lobe, I'm scan, 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 scan. I'll see a change, but if I'm not a very skilled person, meaning, you know, you've just been doing this your whole time, what'll wind up happening is you're not going to be used to seeing, you'll think that it's kind of noise loss, right? See how fast I moved over it? And if you're going really slow, right, maybe you're using this kind of coupling and it dries out a little bit, then you're going to miss it as well. That 80% thing that I was showing you here is just a quick, you know, I've got a problem here. I'm seeing I lost signal. I go back. Yes, I checked it. Yes, I do. I have wall loss, right? But again, we're going to set a reference level. The way that we do that, we press the gain key. We bring the signal down to whatever it is at that tip at about 80%. Sorry about that, guys. We're going to hit enter. You'll see it'll gray out. If I want to add gain, I just press gain again. It'll bring that signal, that first lobe, to auto 80, right? Press it again and again. It'll bring me right back down to reference, okay? So now I'm at reference. Okay, and I'm coming up to the lamination. Now, in this particular case, the lamination at a good strong reference level, bring that down a little bit actually, we notice the first key difference is it does not drop my signal, right? Not like this guy did up here, this wall loss signal. I didn't lose my back wall. Didn't go all squirrely. Didn't look like the 1970 videos from Peanut and Charlie and the Brown when the teacher was talking, rah, 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 right? This pulls up, shoots straight up in the exact same place. Now, it's a little difficult to see, but you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then that last one is 10 vertical lines on the screen, okay? And look at those as like placeholders, right? If your back wall is back here by the 5th one, you know that this is your entry to back wall, or entry surface to back wall, and you move in, right? You immediately see it's rising and falling in the exact same location. The other unique thing about laminations is there's little to no movement on the baseline, meaning it doesn't do what you've seen earlier. The other thing is that it has the same signal characteristics no matter how you scan it, okay? So that little focused area, that's from our students, really focused in on that lamp, okay? So what I want to show you is when I go this way over it, it has one characteristic, and when I go that way over it, it has the same signal characteristic. This is the only type of, I wouldn't say damage mechanism because it isn't necessarily, it's an inherent discontinuity, let's say that. This is the only inherent discontinuity, okay, that has the same signal characteristic or echo dynamic no matter how you scan it, right? Whether you go vertical, right? Or whether you go horizontal, it rises and falls. Let's go back and let's look at that corrosion, right? Here it goes almost all the way to that 2nd or 3rd line. See that? And then now let's go vertical. It's not the same signal characteristic. As the points change in time and how the corrosion is, formed, we may see something depending on the difference in sound path distance, but essentially it's all different, right? So as an example, here's another type of damage or wall loss, right? This one's erosion. This one will kind of do a little swoop, right? I crank up the gain just a little bit. You see it do like a little swoop in one way, and then it'll do a gradual decrease, right, back to an increase. It's a different signal characteristics. And laminations give the same signal characteristics no matter what the thickness of the plate, right, regarding scanning it in the same direction. So we'll take a look at another one. We have one over here. This is a thinner 1/4 inch. Now, on thin plates, if you have the luxury, okay, of a 7.5 megahertz transducer, or maybe even a 10, you definitely want to take advantage of that resolution. That resolution is really crisp. We'll talk about that at another time. But most of us just got the good old-fashioned 38 with a D790 and some coupling and probably this cow block, and that's it, right? We ain't even give us the rags, right? We borrowed them from another job site. No, I'm just kidding. So when we go into this, all right, we're gonna go ahead and do the same thing we did, set a reference level, okay? When you go into the range and you say, all right, well, it should be 2 back walls like Theo said, you'll notice that it does still have the same signal characteristics, right? But maybe it's a little wide in the base. It's kind of confusing you. For this thickness on that D790, go ahead and put that range at 1 inch, okay? You'll see now, look how the difference in the resolution, right? How clear it becomes, right? And now I'm maxed out over this 1.23 lamination, right? And then here's my back wall. That's the lamination. That one is not the back wall. That's not my back wall, even though it's close to thickness. You can see that when I kind of scale over, cross over, you can kind of see when right? But the main thing I want to show you is that lamination signal, right, is not higher than the second signal. And this one is very big, okay, in size, right? So you have that, okay? The other thing is laminations repeat, okay? And they happen before the first back wall, right? And earlier when I said that isn't my back wall, I meant like the repeat signal of the lamination. So my apologies there if that was kind of unclear. But I can actually hit my wave adjust, okay? And that second, first off, if I move it past the lamination and I have full thickness like I do here, and I'll pull that other plate back, That's a key indicator that I'm looking at a lamination. Again, we're going to use that wave adjust and move that gate. And if I see my full back wall thickness, big key indicator, hey, it's not in the back wall, it's somewhere before that, right? The other thing is they repeat, okay? So, right, you take 122 times 3, I think it was 122, you get what, 366? We got 370, yeah. So you can easily tell that that's also a lamination, right? See that 370? Okay, now let's go back real quick to that 375, and I'll show you that guy. And we're gonna use that wave adjust again, okay? This time, because it's really big, I'm gonna go ahead and get halfway on, halfway off, crank a little gain, okay? And now I'm gonna use my wave adjust, and I can push that gate to that signal, I think, and guess what? That's my back wall. See that? Bam. All day long, not an issue. We're looking at a mid wall, okay? So that's another little key thing about laminations, right? Little things that we can do with this unit. Another one is radio frequency, okay? So radio frequency, earlier you heard me talking about the difference in lobes. So when I use RF mode by hitting display, okay, and going to RF, it's gonna give me both the positives and the negative portions of the trace. All right, so if you don't know too much about gates, definitely again check out Paul Holloway's video on gating characteristics, okay? All right, he makes awesome videos. Okay, so if any of you guys, I'm going to show my age here, seen Michael Keaton's movie ESP, I think it was Michael Keaton, and they used to use radio frequencies to talk to ghosts, right? So it kind of looked something similar like this. When I walk into a lamination, we're going to see these exact same signals move here, right? So let's watch it. Right? It looks like someone's talking, right? Almost like a heart monitor kind of signal. Now let's go look at corrosion in RF mode, okay? Nothing. Completely different signal characteristic, okay? Very flat in the base, looks like somebody's murmuring, kind of like when we were like 12 years old talking back to our parents under our breath, okay? Versus this one is very loud, right? You could tell that that's like the husband talking and that's the wife. So there's a very big difference there with the laminations. All right, so let's go back. And the other thing I got a question about was, hey Theo, what about stacked laminations? Okay, what do those look like, when they're kind of coming over like in a step, right? So we're gonna take a look at that real quick. Now this is on coding. We'll get into echo to echo with laminations because there's also something very unique about the echo to echo function with a lamination. But just looking at the signal characteristics, I'm gonna have to open up my range here a little bit and add some gain because this one's pretty thick. One of the other things I'll tell you guys is if you get something that's really thick where that second range takes you to more screen than you would like to see, fish around to see if you see anything up here. That's just the coding echo, don't worry about that, but just fish around to see if you see anything changing with a loss of a back wall. If not, then what I want you to do is go ahead and change that range, okay? So this is a 2-inch, right? I can hit the delay key here and kind of just bring over my back wall, right? The problem is I don't see a lot of change there, so I may just want to monitor like this, right? Just to see where I'm at, okay? So we're going to go ahead and scan this. We'll come back to the coding, right? First thing, you see all these different echoes popping up. Boom, boom, boom. Well, like we talked about earlier, laminations, they rise and they fall in the same place, and they have the same appearance as a back wall. They're narrow in the base. This particular is a shear wave. We're really thick. And we got this coating, but they're narrow in the base, right? And they have this flat vertical leading edge right there, okay? Flat vertical leading edge, right? So even though if you scan this quick, you think, oh, it's moving. You need to really slow down in your scan, guys, right? Some of you guys are just moving too fast. Maybe you're doing pipeline for a long time, so you're a little cocky. Oh, this is just thickness. Guys, that you do not want to go in there with that kind of mentality. You really want to watch it, okay? Watching the peak of the signal rise up and fall, right? Some people may think that this is walking because you see a little bit of a roll, but we need that indication to form. And the amplitude here did not drop. I mean, it didn't change its shape when it came on, right? It just fell, right? It just fell versus the whole back shape of the back wall changing and running into the rumble and then us seeing it move. So laminations, stacked again, laminations, you want to watch over each one, right? And then do that same trick. Get it halfway on, halfway off. Now you're probably seeing see that 87 thousandths. The reason it's reading that, it's reading some noise back here, okay? Any signal over 20% in standard mode, that's this STD mode right here, any signal over 20% is gonna read that one. And when the signal gets less than 20%, it'll read the other one. So right now, I'm just gonna use a wave adjust to kind of get past those little signal characteristics so the gate doesn't pick it up anymore. And then I'm walking in, I see this guy rise, I get halfway on, halfway off, I use my wave adjust, okay, again, and this time I'm gonna push that second gate signal to the back. Like, do I need to do this? No. When you're training and you're first looking at the signals, I recommend it, just so that you can see, right, why they're not affecting that back wall, so you can see it. But do you know, after a while, you see that signal characteristic, it rises and falls, no matter what I do, it's always in the same place, then there's no reason to do that, okay? See, no matter how you scan, you have the same signal characteristics, okay? No matter how you scan. So, that's another one on a stacked lamination. And then the last thing we got is, we just saw encoding, but we're gonna pretend here for a second, we're just gonna talk about the auto E to E function, okay? We're gonna change this delay. Okay, and the auto E to E function is to detect when there is, or is really used when there's, before we put it into service. It's a good baseline signal. A lot of you guys are using standard mode for coded and uncoded. The thing is you always have to worry about this temperature. If you guys aren't checking your cal like you should, a lot of those are going to change those readings, and we're really focused. And those readings are very important, right? So you got to make sure that you're doing the same type of repeatability so we get a really good trend over a period of time. All right, so now we're going to talk about that auto E to E, right? I'm going to go ahead and change my calibration to auto E to E. First, I'm going to take this all the way off the screen. Okay. All right. So whenever I cal in, I'm gonna hit second function zoom, and that's gonna show me my E to E, and then I'm gonna go to auto E to E. If you're wondering what manual E to E is, it's to change the gate for the shear wave. We'll talk about that a little later on when we get into coatings, but right now I just kind of want to show you the basics with the auto E to E on a lamination, whether it's coated or not, versus something that is corroded. You're gonna be like, holy crap, I never noticed that. So I'm gonna show it to you real quick. So first thing, we're gonna go ahead and cal in. Yes, the cal is different because it's not in cal versus a second ago when I was in cal. The reason is because the standard mode takes into consideration, again, the time of flight through the delay. The auto E only takes into consideration the material thickness itself. So we're gonna have to calibrate again in auto E to E. So calvel, enter, tell the unit is 500 thousandths, cal 0, enter, Tell the unit that this is 100 thousandths. Cool, quick little check, ta-da, we are good. All right, so now we're reading from echo to echo and not entry surface to echo. So as we're reading here, it is reading between two easily distinguishable back walls. Again, that's a repeat of this guy. So it's clearly distinguishable. So as you're scrubbing and you're scrubbing and you're scrubbing on good material, you don't have to worry about anything. You're going to get a numerical value and you'll be, this is my thickness, okay? But when you get into corrosion, look what happens. Now I got a shift in a signal, okay, and a gate that shoots across the screen because it's looking for another back wall to read off of. In standard mode, it'll read it just fine. We're going to come back to this when we start talking about coding on corrosion plates and what do we do to take care of the difference. I'm just showing you the auto E to E mode because this is something else you can use really quick for a fast detection of whether something is there or not, right? So here again, corrosion, signal shifts to the left, gate moves all the way to the right, and I have no value here. Lamination, on the other hand, because it acts like a back wall, it will read between them, as you see here. So this is another quick way to determine if something is a lamination, right? It's these little tips and tricks we show you or refine, and we decided, hey, we're gonna make this public because, you know what, we don't believe that you need an ISQ class. We believe you need the NDT gym. And this is what we show you, okay? So definitely want to appreciate you guys. I think that we've kind of covered this pretty good in detail. We've talked about stack laminations. We talked about auto E to E. And just so you can see, be like, well, wait a minute, Theo, I didn't see the lamination on coding. It's auto E to E, it's the same. But I'm going to go ahead and show you real quick. All right, so we got to change our range here. All right, now this is a really good example with this coding. So you're noticing that the gate isn't really wanting to read the signal. Here it's reading it. I move over a little bit, then it doesn't know because the auto E to E function picks the first two signals that are the highest, okay? So right now it's picking these two. When we go to manual E to E, I get to tell the unit, it'll say extension blank. To get here, you're gonna have to press wave adjust, press the arrow down key and get E1 blank. And now you can tell the unit, hey, what signals you want it to read from, okay? Now, no matter what you do, it's not going to read those first two signals, okay? But let's go over here to the lamination. Now it's not reading the lamination 100% correctly because the way I set the gate, when you tell the unit, hey, I want, we're basically telling the unit, give me this signal and ignore everything between this point and this point. I just want this one and that one, right? So if anything is between in that area, it won't read it. All right, as far as when I say read, I'm talking about a numerical value. But now we're getting a number than we were before, right? Okay. See? So E to E, right? Manual E to E, it will pick up laminations all day long, whether it's coded, right? I did it here, bare, it doesn't matter. So those are a real couple of quick tips and tricks about that. One last one before I get off of this. Somebody told me one time, like, you know, hey, ASNT is trying to trick people. They have corrosion and laminations in the same plate, you know, and I just, for the life of me, I couldn't understand what they were talking about. And then I went back and I read in the exam rules, and it talked about wall loss, and this is when I first started this. They talked about wall loss, and it said that it could appear, right, as having multiple back walls if it's close to the scanning surface and has a flat plateau. And I was like, what are they talking about? This is what they're talking about. Okay, so here in this area, we can see we've got corrosion and then we got a flat plateau area, right? So we created these blocks to kind of show you guys, hey, this is what they're saying verbally. This is what they're talking about. Now, is this close, real close to the scanning surface? No. but that costs a lot of money, and Theo don't have that yet. We do take donations though. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna look at this signal characteristic, okay? Since we're talking about lambs and that comment came up. Okay, let me go ahead and get out of, I'm gonna go into step back to standard mode here so we can ignore that gate. Okay, always set a reference level. Theo's very big on reference levels. All right, so I'm scanning, and then wait a second, I thought I saw something, right? Put some more coupling over in this area. Probably would have helped if I looked before I started scanning. And then I see something right here, right? I lose my back walls and I see a drop and a curl, but then whenever I get to the center of it, I see this real high pitched signal, right? If you're scanning fast, you'll see that and say, oh, it's a lamb. No, first off, slow down, walk into it. Oh, wait, I lost my back wall, and then I get these high peaks, right? If you're scanning quick, okay, you may not see that shift. So definitely slow down. When you're scanning and you think it's a lamb, make sure you scan in 2 directions. Remember, a lamination is the only one that'll give you the same signal characteristics in both directions, right? So here's this direction, okay? And here's the other direction. Okay, again, vertical. And now horizontal. It's not the same signal characteristic, guys. Okay, so again, laminations are the only ones that gave you the same signal characteristics. I hope these tips and tricks helped you with the lamination. Stay tuned as we move into episode number 2, and we're going to be talking about erosion signals.